No one else could pull off that all-important Windsor knot in his tie. At the hospital, my father was wheeled into a cubicle, where Annette took his hand and explained to us that they were just getting a quarantine room ready for him because A&E is full of people coming in with all sorts of germs, and we don't want your dad catching anything. Then she said she'd like a moment alone with my father. I watched from a distance as Annette sat next to my dad, their heads almost touching while she spoke to him. I've wondered if this was the moment she told him, "Albert, it's almost time." I imagine it might have been. In the quarantine room, my mother and I sat on either side of Dad's bed. I watched as blood and platelets drip, drip, dripped into my father's arm, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his tie removed. He lay on top of the bed linens, and I remember thinking, he's such a smart, dear, lovely man. The plan was that as soon as the transfusion was complete, there would be a short wait and a cup of tea and a pastry for Dad before another ambulance would come to take him to the hospice. In the meantime, we waited. Drip, drip, drip. Blood and platelets entering my father's body, giving us all a little more time. We spoke of this and that for a while, ordinary things, subjects of no great import. Then Dad turned and reached towards my mother, taking her hands in his own. "Haven't we had a great life?" he said. She leaned her head towards his, pulled back one hand and rested it against his cheek. He moved his head and kissed her palm. As quietly as I could, I stood up and crept away from my chair, my footfall silent as I left the room, turning the door handle without a sound so as not to interrupt their moment. Instead, I stood in the hallway reading and rereading the wall-mounted instructions for evacuation in case of fire. Haven't we had a great life? And in that moment, as I turned and focused on the red, backlit exit sign, I felt my chest ache and my breath become short, and I wondered if I shouldn't be admitted into care without delay. My heart had swollen, and I felt a weight on my chest that took my breath away. I loved them not only because they were my parents. I loved them for who they were, for their resilience and capacity for endurance at the very worst of times. I cherished them for their love of each other, for their love of life, and of us. I would have moved mountains to keep them safe, together. Haven't we had a great life? Chapter 1. About Me and Memories. Memories appear in flashes of light, in short scenes, in reflections that can make us laugh or bring us to tears. They might come in on a sneaker wave of grief or be buoyed up from our past by a certain fragrance in the air or a sound from afar. The essence of memoir, I suppose, is that it could better be described as rememory. We don't just look back at an event in our past, we're remembering the memory of what happened. It's a bit like putting the laundry through 2 wash cycles. The whine of a chainsaw in the distance brings back autumn days working on a farm close to our home in England's Weald of Kent. Mist hangs across the land like a silk scarf, not quite touching the earth, but not rising high enough to join a cloud. Sunshine filters through, grainy, as the shades of gold change with the waning day. And there it is, the whine of that chainsaw. I remember, once, walking with my father across the fields close to their new home. Dad hadn't quite settled. It would take him a long time to feel anything akin to the love he had for that old house at the end of a Victorian terrace, where he and my mother had lived for over 24 years and raised 2 kids. As we walked that day, we found a hop vine growing through the hedge, a leftover from the days when the field had been a hop garden. The hop vine is always called a bine in Kent and Sussex, and hops are grown in a garden, not a field. My father pulled a couple of hops from the vine and crushed them between his hands, and then brought his nose to his palms, his eyes closed. "My whole childhood is rushing before me," he said.